I was confessing to Philip, I was working on this till late last night and a little bit this morning, and so I got like 82 slides. So once I get going on this, I'm going to try and do 2 a minute and just go through it. And we're going to talk about golden eagles and osprey, and starting, of course, with golden eagles. So what can we learn about when we use satellite telemetry to study golden eagles? And this is just some broad stroke stuff, and I'm going to move quick. Habitat use and selection, we can get up to 12, sometimes more locations a day on the hour. And you can do that for years if these units hold up and the birds do, and everything else. Migration routes, wintering grounds, breeding grounds, stopover area use, and how they're occupying and utilizing those territories. Distances traveled, even per hour, you can get some speed data, correlate it to weather. There's just so much you can do. Causes of mortality with golden eagles is particularly interesting in this climate that we have right now for the species. The Fish and Wildlife Service really wants to know. They have a big mortality study going, and we're a part of that. And also just look at some basic stuff, fidelity to these breeding ranges, winter ranges, mates, etc. And we're in times now where technology is just lending itself so well to learning more about wildlife and towards conservation, but it's changing so much. And even 5 years ago, I would have had no clue that I'd be talking about this today. So why study? I was a little punchy last night about 11 p.m. So why study golden eagles? Sorry. Well, the reason why we're looking at golden eagles and we're looking at adults primarily is because they're an understudied demographic. Most of the satellite telemetry work has been done on subadults and nestlings that leave the nest, so they catch the nestling, instrument the bird, and cut it loose. Catching adults is a little trickier, and in particular on migration, also on territory. It's hard to catch adults, and we get lucky and we're able to do it. Migration point counts are showing 15-year decline for the species, and this is, and I'll show some graphs on that, as well as breeding populations in the lower 48 are also going down. I think there's only one study I'm aware of where they're actually seeing a slight increase. Causes for these declines are really unknown. We do know that 70% of mortalities of known mortalities are human caused. Energy development is an issue. It's something that we need to look at. And again, this mortality information is going to be really important here in Montana and across the West. One of our satellite telemetered birds died in a snare trap in January. It was a bird we'd been tracking for 3 years. And it sucked that the bird died that way, but it's a piece of data that we can use. And 2 others got killed in as many days, so 3 total in 3 days. This is a look at Peter Sherrington's migration data up in Alberta. It's along the Rocky Mountain front in Alberta, and it's the largest concentration of migratory golden eagles known in the world. Peter and his colleagues have been counting the birds there since '93, and this graph goes to 2010, but I just want to say that this trend continues through 2012. And they're out there now, and it's more pronounced in the spring, although and this is a spring graph, but the fall graph shows this nearly 50% decline in 15 years. Steve Hoffman shared this. This is Bridger count data, adult golden eagles, 20 years worth of data, 35% decline. So there's reason to be concerned. Just a quick look. Here's our MPG birds, and these are just some other polygons and other wintering areas for our birds. We had one down here in Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, of course. And the reason I point this out is because when we talk about energy development and we look at this map, oil, gas, coal bed, methane, these are all active fields. And these are tracks mostly from Carol McIntyre's work in Denali, but also some of our lines. And you can see a lot's going on. And the bulk of this started in the mid-'80s, and we noticed those declines started in the early '90s. Just another quick look. This is a San Juan Basin coal bed methane field. This is some of our satellite tracks. Again, it looks like avoidance, just for illustrative purposes there. So anyway, again, we're looking at migratory birds, and for this talk, we're going to focus on winter habitat use. I will touch in on some summer range stuff for the MPG birds and a little bit of the migration stuff. Here's our 2 trapping stations. As all of you know about these trapping stations of ours, because they've kind of have interfered with things. You guys saw this yesterday, shooting net launcher, and here we are pulling a tangled eagle out of a net. Here's Adam. This happens to be a resident female that we caught up Whaley. We call it the woodchuck female. Kerr found the nest last year, and Adam's got this bird wrapped up in an eagle straitjacket that Lauren made that works great. This is a look at the breast patch for our transmitters. Just a little cotton string here, and we also we do the same kind of setup for the Osprey. We have a little bit of elastic in here to allow for a little flex, and this we expose that to the bird. So over time, if the bird picks at that, the harness will slide off and in theory slough off in one shot. And here's what the transmitter looks like. You know. So we're going to look at some winter habitat use. So one of the things that we were wondering about is like how are birds utilizing the Bitterroot Valley? What size territories are they keeping, if at all? Do they show fidelity to these areas? What kind of habitat use is associated with these areas? And where are the birds coming from? Simply, where are birds in the Bitterroot Valley that we capture in the Bitterroot Valley? Where do they originate? Where do they breed? And this information will no doubt be used, and already is being used with some of our other birds for management and conservation purposes. So we use anywhere from a 70, 45, 30 gram unit, depending what we have. With the eagles, you can vary that. We're now down to the 45s, and even just a couple years' time, these units have gotten smaller. 30 grams are what we put on the Osprey, and these units, if they're working optimally, will last for three years or so. Again, the breakaway style backpack harness, and we define these wintering and summering areas by the timing of their migration, and we used a 50 and 95% minimum convex polygon to define these territories. 7 adults, 1 resident, sure looks like a resident, 3 male, 3 female. So again, going through those questions. Here's our 2 Bitterroot birds. This is what we named this one Brooks. I like it when we name birds. A lot of people don't. It helps me keep track of them, so we got to name these other ones that we have. So this is Brooks, appropriately named because she nests up in the Brooks Range. That's her breeding ground. And this is Wrangell, because he's in that Wrangell Mountains or somewhere over there. But anyway, here's our male, female. She nests way up there, he nests here, and they're both utilizing the Bitterroot Valley and the MPG ranch. This is just a quick look at all our birds right now, where they're at. This is Brooks. She's up here in this area. I'll talk about her in a little bit. Here's Wrangell. He's doing this Idaho loop up near Lake Coeur d'Alene and Ponderay. And here's some of our other birds. But you see these birds that we capture in December in the Bitterroot Valley, they don't stay there. And they're just like, there doesn't seem to be any pattern or anything, anything. We never know what these birds are going to do is what it boils down to. So with the birds that we have multiple years, 2 years of data on, we can say something about territory size and fidelity to those areas. Here is Brooks and Wrangell. Wrangell has this really giant, wait a minute, no, that's Brooks, sorry. I didn't put the names in here, that was my mistake. So anyway, we get a huge wintering area when you look at 95% of the points. Comes down, and these are 2 years in a row. So here's 2011, 2012, and this was 2012, 2013. And when those points were taken, and I'll talk about her again, that was right before she went out to the front like she did last year. So she went out to the front, and she did that right after this data was analyzed. So it would probably be looking more like that. And our male tends to keep a little bit of a tighter size, and these are their summer ranges. So the female, Brooks, has a very tight 16 square kilometers on her summer range. So no doubt she nested, she had young and eggs. And Wrangell, the male, he was wide-ranging. We're not sure if he bred. In consulting with other golden eagle people, they don't think he bred. It was just too big of a territory. Again, I got to move through these guys. So do they show fidelity to these wintering areas? Well, they came back. That was good. Here we have, this is a spring and fall migration. You see this line, this is where I was talking about that count site. That's the Rocky Mountain front. That's kind of the highway, the Golden Eagle Highway right there for these northern latitude birds that are wintering anywhere down here in the lower 48. Our male, he kind of took a little, he kind of swung out to the east in the spring and took his time. He stopped over here for a while. Again, so here we're going to talk about Brooks real quick. And you can see where she comes out here to the front. She did that last year and she's doing it this year again. So when we look at Brooks and the Bitterroot Valley, here's the MPG ranch. This is where she was caught. We're looking at 2011, 2012 data. Again, the 2012 data was a little incomplete because the numbers were basically crunched about a week before she swung back out here. And we're looking at 95% and 50% minimum convex polygons, and then we put in some of these are the actual fixes. So you have the polygons which give you the footprint, but then when you look at actually where the birds were, it kind of tells a little bit of a different story. But again, a high fidelity to the wintering ground. You know, they came right back. This is a female. She came right back, and when you look at the core use area for 2011 and 2012, it's very tight. And the wider ranging 95%, again, is very similar. If we were able to pull this, if we gathered another week of data, we would have saw that line come out. Difference is, at least at last check, she's not come back. In 2011, she came back. And she also tends to stick, like kind of fly around the Bitterroot Valley. We don't see her down in the floodplain. We don't get a lot of points in the middle of the valley. She sticks to these wooded, to the forest structure, which is something I'll talk about. We were surprised to see how much use of the conifers these eagles, how much they make use of the conifers, and we have some theories as to why that is. And she spends a lot of time down here too in the southern end of the Bitterroot Valley, and we were thinking maybe she's following wolves. We know that golden eagles will scavenge wolf kills. And this is just a little tighter view. And again, talking about that conifer use, all up here in the sapphires from year to year. You know, one winter to the next. I mean, she has a very tight territory, her wintering territory. Wandered up Highway 12 both years a little bit. Real interesting stuff, actually, from a behavioral standpoint when we look at these birds. These adults in particular, when you look at younger birds, you don't get this kind of stuff from what I understand. It's these older birds, they got their system down. And it makes you wonder how they react if there's major changes to their environment. And when I talked about her, she moved out here to the front. Now, last year when she came out here, we thought, oh, this is probably where she's breeding. She left early, and we were sending out emails. Steve Hoffman, Brian Bedrosian, David Ellis, Jim Wish, all these golden eagle experts, and everybody had a different theory as to what she was doing. I thought that that was probably her breeding ground because she was just hanging around. And sure enough, just about to the day, the yellow signifies this year, the red is last year, or vice versa, sorry. The yellow is last year, red is this year. So there's something there that she's cueing in on, whether it's some calving operation, it's emergent ground squirrels, we don't know. And we've been wanting to get up there and take a look, but you know, it's hard to even go that far. I mean, we can't get over into Canada, but we could probably assess it from this side. This is a look at her summering area. Again, real tight, about 16 square kilometers. And this is the core use area. And when we look at this, we look at this cluster and this cluster, and we can probably take a good guess that either one of these sites is where her nest is. And when you look at this massive landscape, the Brooks Range in Alaska, the whole mountainous region, and you see how tight this territory is for her, it makes you wonder, is there a territory here, another one over there? I mean, just that little dot. I mean, that really is it, just that teeny little dot. So they're could just be packed with golden eagles up there that are all wintering down here, either in Montana or New Mexico, whatever. So now we're going to look at Wrangell a little bit. Of course, he came back down. This is his spring routes. This is just kind of an overall look at his movements. And he did, you know, last year he hung up here in this area. We call it a stopover area, and he also hit that in the spring. Must be something there, resource dependent. But he took his time so much here that it might have something to do with the fact that he didn't have a mate up here. So now we're looking at his movements. He goes the completely opposite way. He goes all the way out here to Idaho. Hooked back around the blue line is this year. And that's the 95. And then you look at the core use, the 50%. He is real tight to the Bitterroot Valley. More of central northern Bitterroot Valley. The green that's him from 2011. And the difference between this year and last year with Wrangell is that when he took this trip last year, in late February, early March, he didn't come back. He hung around Coeur d'Alene for a while, maybe hunting waterfowl. Not sure, but it's interesting to see just how tight his points are. And he tends to use a little more of the floodplain, a little more of the foothills of the Bitterroot. Sometimes we think he's hanging around feeding at the carcass compost pile where we get a lot of our deer. This is a closer look at his stuff. Again, down here near Stevensville, and there's the DOT, the Department of Transportation, composts all their dead deer, and he does hang around there a lot. And again, a lot of use of this cottonwood riparian, which we did not see at all with Brooks. And he'll hang around the ranch quite a bit too, and stick to the foothills, the conifers of the sapphires. And these birds tend to stick around in December, early January, and then disperse, and through most of November too. And we think they might be seeking out gut piles, but again, that's just a theory. When we look at Wrangell's summer range, huge summer range as compared to that 16 square kilometers of Brooks, and then his is over 8,000 square kilometers. So almost certainly he didn't breed, but he definitely has an area that he sticks to. This is an adult male that we put a transmitter on this year, just to give you an idea of what's going on. We instrumented him here in early January. Then he went out here to Butte and was hanging out by Warm Springs and between Butte and Anaconda. Again, I'm thinking, well, we got ourselves a breeder over there. It just hopped over to Bitterroot just to hang out for a little bit, look for some gut piles, whatever they do here. We got a lot to learn. And then sure as heck, after about a month, he starts heading up to Clark Fork, went up to 9 Mile, and is now actually further along up this way. So as usual, I'm wrong when it comes to predicting what these birds are doing. This is another adult male that we were kind of hoping. It was hanging around the ranch a lot, and we thought, okay, great, this is good. And we start tracking him, and okay, now he's sticking to those conifers again. I mean, far and away the most commonly used habitat this time of the year for the birds we have instrumented. And it just started making its way. This is on February 24th, February 26th. This is noon, 2 p.m. February 27th, it's hanging around out here. And it hung out here for a while until March 7th. So what's it doing out there? I think maybe calving or emergent ground squirrels. I don't know what else it could be doing, but certainly knew where it was going. And now, just as of a few days ago, it's back down on the ranch and in the Bitterroot Valley. So maybe it is a resident. I don't know. No idea. Trying to think what bird that is. I didn't put my little thing there, you know. Oh, I know. This is the bird with the bum eye. Remember the one that footed me. I had to call my doctor like on a Saturday and get him to script me some penicillin because I got my hand in the wrong place. Twice in my life I've been footed by a golden eagle. The infection happens fast. Anyways, she headed up. She was hanging around the ranch. Go back here. And then she just headed up the Swan, and then she stayed near Glacier, and then I thought, well, maybe we got a Glacier breeder. Nah, again, headed up the highway, going up the Rocky Mountain front, who knows where she'll land. The good thing is, she's doing great. I mean, you get nervous when you put these transmitters on a bird. You're like, oh shit, is everything right? You know, okay, we do everything, we take every precaution, but no matter how you could slice it, you're still throwing this equipment, this paraphernalia on this bird after you abduct them. Put them through hell for about an hour. So we've got a really good success rate, and we hope that continues. We work really hard to make these birds as comfortable as we can, and so that they can act as normally and just kind of go on being eagles after we mess with them. This is the MPG female that we really wanted to work at. Adam and I, we've been wanting to get a resident bird for a long time, talking to Kate and Philip. Kerr found the nest. Anyway, long story short, we finally got it this year. We had to go out there on the ranch in complete darkness, put our trap out, and we set it somewhere right out here by the beehives, up Whaley, if that's accurate. And then we partied with Jeff at the Orchard House that night, and then we had to get up early. I smelled like smoke from the fire. My head hurt. We didn't even have coffee mugs. We had to bring coffee mugs from the upper house. You know, I mean, it was like we were so ill prepared. But we got our butts out there early, and before the sun came up, before civil twilight, and we caught the bird. And this is just another look at this resident bird. And these points, you know, are probably points when she's flying around. Altitude points are one of the areas where these transmitters don't give us great accuracy, but it gives you a little picture of just kind of how she's using the ranch. And if Kerr found a nest over here somewhere on the east side of the property or just off property, but she clearly uses the ranch a lot. So we're really looking forward to what she's going to show us about how these birds are utilizing the ranch. And we really want to get this male over here. And again, to watch and see how they're using the ranch, nesting on it, foraging on it. And over the next few years, who knows what we can learn, providing that everything works with this bird. So when we talk about habitat types that are associated with them, I'm going to move quick here, guys, otherwise I'm going to miss this. But here's the conifers, okay, in Montana. Huge amount of conifer use. And then when you look here in New Mexico, just for comparison, we're looking at pinyon juniper. In New Mexico, they're hanging out in these island mountain ranges, a lot of it on the edge. And Colorado, we have a lot of conifer deciduous use too. But everybody was shocked by that. They just couldn't believe it. It's like, you think of golden eagles, you think of open country, sage, grassland, but not conifers. But they're using them, at least this time of year. This is just another look at that. We had two of the birds from MPG and then one of Ross's birds. But again, we have a lot of conifer grasslands. Let's see what we got here. Where's the conifers? Yeah. I mean, look at Montana. And then when you look at something like Wyoming, you see a lot of sagebrush. That's what you'd expect. And then we had that bird down in New Mexico, uses a lot of coastal. These birds are very adaptable. The ones in the Bitterroot, selecting for conifers. So in summary, sorry, you know, yeah, we saw a lot of the birds were in the woods a lot. And what that means, we don't know yet. We think it might have something to do with hunting season and looking for gut piles and possibly feeding on wolf and mountain lion kills. And the wintering areas, they change throughout winter. In November, December, they stick tight to the valley. We see lots of golden eagles. Then it starts to change. We see a shift that occurs in January. And in February, it's like they're all leaving. They're heading out in the front, going out to Idaho, and starting to head back to their breeding ranges. And we see a tremendous amount of variation in these winter territory size in between individuals. A lot of fidelity to those areas. Although there is variation even within the individuals, the core use areas is a lot of fidelity. We saw that with Brooks out on the front, saw it with her in the Bitterroot, and the same with Wrangell. There doesn't seem to be any gender-specific differences in the timing and how they use the landscape, really. Of course, we don't have a sample size large enough to say a lot there, but when I say that, I'm speaking of our other birds that we've instrumented over near Lincoln. And the behavior between these individuals varies greatly. All the birds we were looking at this winter and that we put these transmitters on, they all come to the Bitterroot Valley to hang out for a while, but then when they leave, they go all different directions and different habitats, and who knows where these birds are going to summer. All right. Osprey satellite tracking. This is a new project that we've been working on Osprey. I've been working with Osprey with Eric Green and Heiko Langer for years now, and mostly as part of the Clark Fork remediation and Superfund site, looking at toxicity levels, mercury and other heavy metals in the birds. And Osprey are great bioindicators. So just a little background on Osprey and on the project. You know, Ospreys suffered big time due to DDT, like peregrine falcons, like bald eagles, brown pelicans, and so they made a comeback after we stopped using DDT in this country. Status with Osprey in Montana is not clear. I just got a call from Robert Beauregard, we call him Richard, but he goes by Rob. I don't know, it's confusing. Anyway, he worked on the species account, and he was asking me, well, what about the range map on the species account? And I'm like, well, I think it needs to change. And so what does that tell us? Are Osprey expanding? Are we seeing more Osprey now in Montana than we ever did before? Christy, actually, I sent her the email, and she was able to give Beauregard a lot of great information due to your bald eagle work, Christy, and that was awesome. I was glad you were able to respond to that. But they're going to expand the range map. So at one time were ospreys all over the state, and now they're making a comeback, or are we seeing an expansion in the species? We don't know. They're great biosentinels of aquatic ecosystems, especially when you talk about heavy metals that bioaccumulate like mercury. We wanted to look at family group dynamics in Montana. It's never been done. Very rarely has been done anywhere, and it kind of coincided with some work that Brian Bedrosian and with Craig Hedbringia South were doing down in Teton. So where do our Montana birds go? We don't know. We have no idea where they went after we get done banding them. We never get any band returns. Well, we did get one band return. A bird was hit in like Acapulco by a plane, so we know it went down there. But that was one bird out of, you know, hundreds. Where do the young do? Before they come back to breed at 2 or 3 years of age, what do they do? So we'll be able to find out a little something about that. And the mortality information, again, is important. I'll talk about that as we move. Here's our nest sites. This is what we call entrance nests, north center pivot nest, which when I was looking at Nick's presentation earlier and looking at north center pivot nest, it looks like it needs some work. So we might want to get up there and try and fix that up before they get back and work on that hardware cloth, so we got to catch them again. Again, we use a couple of capture methods. This is what we call the igloo method. Robert Beauregard clued us in on this. I'll show you pictures of that. Or a noose fish, which is a whole different way to catch birds. Let me tell you, we'll show you. Nestlings, easy enough. Go up, grab them. 30-gram transmitters. We're now going to switch to 22-gram transmitters. Same attachment style. We're going to be looking at 2 distinct family groups and track and learn. So my Uncle Dave owns Dave Taylor Roofing, so he has this big boom truck, which made it real easy for us to start doing osprey work. Here's Adam securing the igloo. This, I don't know why they call it an igloo. I guess it's kind of shaped like an igloo. And it has all these nooses on it here, and we put some fake eggs in there. So when the osprey lay their eggs, we know they're set on that nest, and so we remove the eggs, put them on had some heating pads and some rags and a cooler, in an igloo cooler, by the way. And then we put the dummy eggs in there, and we got to get down, get away from the nest, and we wait for the bird to come down. It wants to land on the eggs. It's kind of a nasty trick, but anyway, it gets hung up on the nest, and then we got to hustle back in the truck, raise it up, get up there, and here's Adam and I trying to get this thing off of this. We never used this before, too. I mean, we had it tied on there real good. It worked pretty good, and I don't know why I threw that in there. It's just kind of a stressed out osprey face. And this is, I'm switching gears a little bit here, and okay, so this is a couple months later. Here are the nestlings, and you can see we put these little blue IDs on them in addition to the USGS band. And after we end up abducting these poor guys and stressing out their parents, you can see the antenna there, we put the transmitter on them, and then we reward them with a big fat golden trout. My uncle got those. I asked him, hey, could you pick up some trout from the supermarket? He goes to the good food store and buys these giant golden trout. So here's looking at the noose fish. Some people did this. The first time this was ever done was on African fishing eagles. And Bedrosian, Ross Crandall, those guys we work with, I mention them all the time, and we're just so tightly tied in with these guys. They messed around with this, using with bald eagles, so we took it and we said, well, we could do this. Let's try this on osprey. And we had to do this because we captured the adult male from the north center pivot nest on that igloo. And it's the only bird that any of us had heard about that had actually chewed through its Teflon strap. So Kerr was down on the floodplain. He goes, hey, Rob, I saw that osprey flying around, and it looks like that transmitter is hanging around outside. And we're like, no, really? Oh. All right, so we better go catch him. And so now we had to target the bird, which is a whole other thing that you have to do. But successful, we caught it. And the bird was still able to function, feed the young. It was doing well. So we caught that bird and fixed him up, put the transmitter back out. And he's doing great, by the way, as far as we could tell, down in Mexico. Actually, no. Yeah, he's in Mexico. They're all in Mexico. But here it is. So we put that noose fish, we tie it to a piece of dacron and a stump that'll float, not a stump, but you know, a big piece of wood. And we were lucky to be able to use the raft at the MPG. It was perfect, and we put in at Bob's property, and Kerr, Adam, Tyler, and I, we went out a couple times, and we had to target the bird, so we had to look at the points. Okay, where are we going to get that male? He likes to fish over here, and you know, Kerr was helping. And, I mean, it took quite an effort. I mean, a lot more than I have time to get into. But anyway, Kerr caught these shots. We're floating the fish down. We're hoping everything is all right. Osprey are pretty acclimated to people. And sure enough, it worked. We couldn't believe it worked. We're like, holy cow, you know? But it's not just that easy, because once you got the bird, now you got to hustle out to the water as quick as you can with your net. And, you know, Adam's got the fish, I got the net, Tyler, you know. But success. Look at Adam, how happy he was. We were all happy. So anyway, we instrumented 8 birds. 1 adult female from the north center pivot nest. We don't know what happened. That transmitter had catastrophic failure. Very, very rare. How much time I got? Oh, cool. Okay, I'll slow down just a little. Okay, good air in, bad air out. This bird, we don't know what happened. We captured her late in the season with that same method. She was doing fine, hanging around the nest with the young, and then the transmitter basically went out on us. So we don't know what happened, but it happened after the young had already fledged and were flying around. And as it is, wait a minute. Oh, here we go. All right, I got scared for a minute. I thought I had the wrong talk. Oh, okay, anyway, so yeah, so I told you it's my first time, guys. Adult female, we don't know what happened to her. So we ended up tracking 3 adults and 4 youngsters, 3 to their wintering ground. One of them ended up going up to Blackfoot and never leaving. You know, William and Adam went up there October 26th. They got great photos of her. She looked great, or he looked great, but just never left. Good fishing up to Blackfoot, but it was getting cold. A lot of cloudy, snowy weather. Transmitter died. We don't know what happened to that bird. We went looking for it. We never found it. This youngster died in Texas. It was hanging out near a pond where there was a big commercial industrial-sized windmill, and the owner of the ranch found the bird. It was injured. It had a busted leg and a busted wing. He took it in his barn and tried to feed it birdseed, is what he told me. But there was no help in that bird. He sent the transmitter back. That transmitter is now out on an eagle. This youngster from the north center pivot nest was doing great, went down to the Caribbean coast in a little north of Veracruz, had been hanging out in a saltwater estuary area, looked like a great place, and then it moved, and it was hanging out along this slough, and that's where the bird stopped moving. And so when we look at these things on a computer, we start to see those red dots stack up, and that's when we know the bird is not moving, it's dead. And so we got in touch with a biologist down in Mexico, and he and his wife went out. 3 days later, they had the bird. It was, you know, battling through ticks and chiggers and snakes and cartel and whatever the hell else he was dealing with down there. So at this point, we have 3 adults and 1 of the youngsters still alive. So just to give a quick look, here's our adult males. So here's north center pivot, here's entrance nest, and you can see there's kind of a good partitioning of fishing areas and territories. Again, unlike the eagles, especially in the wintering grounds, these birds have real tight wintering ground territories. But so they nest pretty comfortably next to each other. We see that the the entrance nest male during high water went all the way up past Lolo fishing. And the north center pivot male, he was sticking pretty tight, but he'd come out down here and they're working these sloughs. And by looking at these points, and when we zero in tighter, this is part of how we were able to catch them with the raft and the noose fish. By looking at these points and finding their favorite fishing areas. And when we were floating along, we'd see them. The ones that we didn't want to catch, they were fishing right where we expected to see them. I'm trying to make these points out. Okay, guys. So yeah, this is just a little closer look. And for the most part, these, I get the feeling they live pretty peacefully next to each other, but they don't really like to share their hot fishing spots. But there's plenty of that along the river there. Here's the female. She doesn't do a whole heck of a lot besides protect the young. The males do all the work here. So they have to provision the female and the young. and they do a heck of a job of it. And I don't fish much, but when we were noose fishing, we had to catch some rainbows. It was pretty easy to catch them. I know Mike and Adam and Jeff, they could probably tell you where all these hot spots are. But again, here's our female. I just threw her in there just so you could see how little she moves compared to these guys. Interesting thing about this North Center Pivot male, this surprised everybody. Well, not that. Okay, this is later in the season, the female. You can see once the young are getting bigger, she goes on little excursions. Seems to swing around North Center Pivot nest territory. No doubt, probably the other osprey didn't like her there very much. Although, when we go to that nest and we start to raise, cause trouble by raising up to the nest, and they start calling and circling, the entrance nest adults came over to investigate, and they'll do this like sort of mobbing, and I think it may work well if a bald eagle or something were to come in and harass, they'll kind of join forces. We've seen that happen a number of times at other nests too, where suddenly other adult osprey come in. Just another look at how they're utilizing these, these tributaries and these little oxbows and all this. And one of the things we could look at here is when we look at the heavy metal chemistry in these nestlings, we can figure where these birds are fishing, and it might tell us something. Well, it will tell us something about what's in those fish that they're catching. Okay, real quick, I'm gonna get through this, guys. All right, this was our North Center Pivot male, and this was really interesting because on May 28th, it went all the way down to Como Lake. It spent the night somewhere in between. And then at 8 a.m. it was at Lake Como, fishing, we presume. And the next day, it went back in the morning, and it was back by noon. That was a long, round trip to get some fishing. And Kate was looking at, she goes, well, I don't know, Rob, but it just so happens that they stocked Lake Como that morning with a bunch of, I don't know what it was, but. Yeah, so it was like, maybe, And then here's a look real quick at all the tracks: Texas, Oklahoma, Nicaragua. I'm going to go fast now. Here's our bird in Nicaragua, adult female from the entrance nest. She's got the slickest spot. Look at this beautiful coves. I mean, this is where we all want to be. All right, and then here's the male from North Center, from entrance nest. He's hanging out down here again in these it's like a lot of mangrove and saltwater estuary area, tons of agriculture, very tight area. We got more points than that, but it's all right there. It's where it happens. And then this male down here, not far from where his nestling was, that ended up dying. And again, he just hangs out around this lake. Super, super tight wintering ground areas all around here. They don't go anywhere. And then here was our Oklahoma bird that got hit by the wind turbine, kind of kissed off the east rim of the Grand Canyon. These young birds don't know where they're going. At least the adults know where they're going. The young birds, the females leave in early September. They're gone. The young hang out with the males. Females get to their wintering grounds and start chilling out while the males got to deal with these hungry fledged birds. But once they get going, it's like, yeah, man, it's got to be a journey for them. And this is where it was, hanging around a golf course down here for a while. This is our Blackfoot bird. Never really, just kind of hung out in that 9 Mile Prairie area, never really left, probably fished, did pretty well. And then here was our nestling that ended up getting killed down there. Hung out in this beautiful area for a long time, and it might have been shot, we don't know. And this is our surviving nestling down along Galveston Island area, and it's still doing well, hanging out, and that's the one we're like banking on to give us something on the nestlings. And so in summary, we know juvenile survivorship is low. Estimates are 70% of mortalities occur that first year of life, and what we found kind of supports that. Breeding territory is very tight. Males do most of the work. No real surprises there. Wintering territory is very small. Associated with saltwater estuaries and agricultural areas. Unlike golden eagles, little variation in wintering areas, and they have fidelity to these. Well, we suspect they have fidelity to these core use areas, and unlike golden eagles, there is no gender-specific difference in timing of migration. These females got the heck out of here. We've looked at golden eagles for a lot of years, not only in the Bitterroot but beyond, and there is no gender-specific time when the female leaves compared to the male. And the behavior between individuals varies within family group, migration routes, wintering destinations. They just spread out and just all kind of seem to have just found their way to their wintering areas. And acknowledgments and thanks. All right.